Good morning, Dumelang, Goeiemorgen, Sanbonani, Absheni, Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's really such a privilege to be your host on this very exciting program that is the Solidarity Fund and Humanitarian Program, or Crisis Fund, and the National Empowerment Fund had come together in a concerted effort together with government and the private sector to try and help restore the damage and negative impact of the recent unrest that were primarily in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. So before going any further, I'd like to also introduce myself. My name is Cindy Mabi, and you are most welcome here at the National Empowerment Fund Business Television as we essentially cement this partnership between the Solidarity Fund and the funder with a soul. What you can anticipate today is opening remarks and essentially just getting the context of how the National Empowerment Fund fits into the Solidarity Humanitarian Crisis Fund program and the synergies that are being drawn there. One, the funder with a soul, having the mandate of growing Black economic participation. And we know that most of these businesses that were affected had been in your peri-urban and rural areas, and of course in cities as well. And this cuts across the board. I mean, these are sectors in the petroleum sector or even retail that have been impacted, tourism, etc. So none had been spared in the recent unrest. So I'd like to acknowledge our CEO, Ms. Philisiwe Mthethwa, who will open with the welcome, the official welcome. We also have our partners and stakeholders from Solidarity, Ms. Majola. We have our investees, Mr. Mbata, Mr. Sibeko, and Ms. Mgoyi, who will give their generous testimonials of their journey of what had happened to the build-up of the unrest and where they are in terms of restoring their businesses. So with that said, this webinar is recorded, so it will be a video on demand on the respective websites. And if there's anything that you'd like to raise with us on social media, we are on Facebook and YouTube as well. Otherwise, if you are on the Zoom platform, please post your questions in the Q&A segment or room rather, as opposed to the chat room. That way our panelists are able to give you real-time responses to your questions or comments as well. So the numbers or the website is at NEF Corp, www.nefcorp.co.za or solidarityfund.co.za. Welcome to our regional managers, also the heads of department, our executives or divisional executives, investment associates, colleagues, and members of the media, and our strategic valued shareholders as well, the investment, or rather Solidarity Fund, and also the Department of Trade and Industry, and all the other economic development sectors that are here, captains of industry. Thank you very much for your time. Now, without any further ado, allow me to welcome to you the CEO of the National Empowerment Fund, and that is Ms. Philisiwe Mthethwa, who holds an MBA Corporate Finance from the University of Sheffield and has studied towards a Master's in Economics. Prior to joining the NEF, she worked for a French investment bank in London and held a responsibility to risk management control at the South African Reserve Bank and worked in the Treasury Division at Standard Corporate and Merchant Bank. She's also was employed as a regional director for Europe by the DTIC in Germany and France to promote European investment in South Africa. And in 2002, she returned to South Africa to become the chief director of the Black Economic Empowerment Unit of the DTIC, which developed the government's broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Strategy document and framework. And amongst her accolades in 2019, she was conferred as the CEO of the Decade by APSIP, and in 2017, Woman of the Year by the same organization, and Special Excellence Award in Financial Services, and the sector in the Black Business Executive Circle, and Woman of Substance in 2013. This was conferred by the African Women Chartered Accountants, and in 2013, 2013, a very well-decorated leader indeed. In 2013, she achieved the top South African Women's Award from the South African Most Influential Women in Business and Government. 2011, she was conferred with the Corporate Business Woman of the Year by the Business Women's Association of South Africa, and was also appointed as the Chevalier de la Légion d'Honneur, or Knight of the National Order of Merit. My French is not that perfect, so I hope you'll forgive me, Madam CEO. But with that said, it's really a pleasure for me to invite Ms. Philisiwe Mthethwa to the podium as she will address us. So welcome, Madam CEO, and thank you so much for joining us. So I've just gotten a note that CEO will join us in a little bit. Can I just get a show of hands, Mr. Mbata? I think I saw you earlier on. Good morning, sir. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. And not to pick on you necessarily, but I just thought, seeing that you were the first one present on the platform, that we could do an initial introduction. I know your segment comes in a little bit later in the program, but I think it's as good a time as any, just to build a rapport and introduce yourself. Mr. Mbata, you being affected, of course, from a petroleum or running a petrol station point of view. Just give us an introduction of yourself, sir.
No, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to the platform. My name is Bonelo Mbata, as introduced. I'm a fuel retailer. Started my trade way back as a petrol attendant, and later on, acquired my very first service station in 2007. In fact, one of the service stations that is in question was my very, very first service station. And so there's that sentimental, attachment to it. And so, yeah, I think over the years, then I started to gain more traction in this space and acquired quite a number of service stations across the country. Then later on, I co-founded a company called Petro Connect, which, aims to open, opportunities for new entrants that are wanting to come into the fuel retail industry. And we also do mentorship and things like those. So I think by and large, that's about me, yeah.
Okay, and I'm curious to know the progression. You were saying that you started out as a petrol attendant. That in itself is an honest living, but we know that it's not necessarily a high earning job necessarily. So how did you, from being a petrol attendant, or maybe the circumstances that led you to that career, if you will, to the point where you were able to acquire your own filling station?
No, absolutely. I always call myself a situational entrepreneur. I never really planned to do what I'm doing. I aspired to be an accountant. I studied cost and management accounting, and I did try to look for a job. Everywhere I went for an interview, I don't think they thought I was good enough, but I'm really grateful to them for not hiring me. So I think by default, I just found myself at a service station, working there, more as a by the way kind of a thing, while waiting for my ideal job. And little did I know that when you sniff, fuel, you will never. It's like a drug. Once you get a sniff of it, you will never get out of it. And so, yeah, 20 years later, I'm still here.
Yes. So I suppose sometimes we shy away from our own destiny and purpose, and somehow it will find you. You know, the universe will conspire in such a way that you do find that which makes you happy and fulfills you. The process in itself, I mean, how difficult. We often hear, and I don't want to get into your testimonial, but we often hear that the price of getting into the space, especially from a franchisee's point of view, is quite exorbitant. It's almost insurmountable. It's quite difficult. Would you say that is quite the reality still?
No, it is. And I think that is one of the main reasons why I'm saying that I started this company called Petro Connect, because what I found is that when I was already an established, we call ourselves dealers, we not drug dealers, but we, in the fuel space, franchisees, we call ourselves dealers. So when I was an established dealer in the space, I wasn't too proud when I looked, in the room full of different dealers in terms of the representation of my own. And that is why then we started to see how best do we work with stakeholders in the industry to try and open up the industry to ordinary people that have no idea how to even go about. And so we started that, and I'm quite proud to say that I think in the last year, we have been able to open opportunities to over 50 candidates that are currently running their own service stations in different places, and we provide mentorship of all sorts. And thanks to the likes of NEF as well, who have also come to the party to fund some of these transactions. So it is difficult, it is still onerous, but we just try and make the load a little bit lighter.
All right, Mr. Mata, please hold on thought. But thank you so much for sharing, and we'll get into your testimonial a little bit later on in the program. As mentioned, again, thank you for your time. Madam CEO, I did introduce you earlier on, but just to highlight from a leader's point of view, I guess one would say that, and you hear this anecdotally in the corridors, that you hold yourself at such a high level and regard that it cascades down to the rest of the organization, that excellence is a habit. There's no compromising or cutting corners. Everything is about integrity, the values and the ethos that we subscribe to here at the NEF to grow Black economic participation. So I'm going to hand over to you, Madam Philisiwe Mthethwa, CEO of the NEF. Good morning.
Good morning once again to everybody who is attending this webinar session. At the outset, it is my privilege to extend a special word of welcome to my fellow panelist, Ms. Wongaga Zimajola from the Solidarity Fund, and to the entrepreneurs who've taken time away from their businesses this morning to find out about the partnership between the National Empowerment Fund and the Solidarity Fund's Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund. So like everyone, I'm also looking forward to the testimonies of some of the businesses that have already been funded by the National Empowerment Fund and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, that is the DTIC. I also gratefully acknowledge the presence of the media present with us today. My name is Philisiwe Mthethwa, the CEO of the National Empowerment Fund. The NEF, just to give you a little bit of background about the NEF, just to refresh your memories, was established by government through the Act of Parliament to provide and grow Black economic participation in South Africa. So we actually provide loans or equity financing. We start from 250,000 and go all the way up to 75 million rands. And where businesses require more, we co-fund with other development finance institutions, government departments, commercial banks, and even some international private equity funds who have partnered with the NEF in some of the projects that we have supported in the past. So I wish to thank the Solidarity Fund for their generosity and commitment to nation building in partnering with the National Empowerment Fund to fund businesses that were damaged in the recent riots across Gauteng and KZN. So the NEF, ladies and gentlemen, offers a variety of non-financial support interventions, starting with our pre-investment function as the first point of contact through which the NEF provides product advisory services, manages the online business plan solution, and facilitates entrepreneurial training and incubation. We also have the Socioeconomic Development Unit that was established to empower Black people in existing transactions and other broad-based groups through various social development interventions, such as social facilitation, entrepreneurial training, and investor education. And through our post-investment unit, we also provide ongoing portfolio management and mentorship support. So you'll actually see a lot of our post-investment support coming through, with the project that we are looking at now, which is the economic recovery of the enterprises that were damaged and vandalized during the riots that we saw in July. So lastly, we have the turnarounds, workouts, and restructuring units. So this is like our ICU project. This is where we'll actually do, the balance sheet restructuring of some of the transactions, that would be in financial distress. Next slide. So the NEF does not limit its funding only to SMEs, ladies and gentlemen, but we seek to see Black people also owning major corporations to become industrialists and to contribute to the country's growth. For this reason, the NEF funds across the economic spectrum with investment funds dedicated to supporting SMEs, women-owned enterprises, rural, township, and community-based businesses, medium-sized corporates, as well as potential industrial players which are financed through our strategic projects fund. So this is where we'll be doing our Black industrialist projects. You may have heard about the Black Industrialist Program. So the NEF funds I have already mentioned that we actually co-finance our transactions with various partners. So you mustn't look at the 75 million rands as a limitation, because the NEF will come in just to try and de-risk the projects. So once we have invested maybe the initial 30 million or 20 million, then we'll actually invite other potential investors to come and get involved in syndicated funding or co-finance the transactions with ourselves. So some of the challenges and market failures that we have observed over the years, during which we were actually involved in providing support and working with the Black-owned enterprises. I know that it would be issues that all of you are familiar with. So the market failures that you are seeing there on this slide. So we will identify a market failure and then try and come up with a solution that will help us to try and address those particular challenges that our Black-owned enterprises are faced with. So the obvious one, of course, is the lack of access to affordable finance. So which is why we are so grateful to the Solidarity Fund for the partnership, because you'll see that their financing will come in as a grant portion. There's also lack of accurate and reliable information and lack of business planning skills. So this particular market failure can also impact on the turnaround times from our side, because if we are not in a position to provide us with all the accurate information that we will be looking for, including reliable financial projections and all of that, that is why sometimes it would actually take much longer to finalize the transaction, or sometimes you'll end up not being able to even conclude and then provide the requisite financing that would be required. There's also lack of access to local and international markets, but for this one we work closely with the DTIC because this also falls within their purview and their ambit. So sometimes they will take companies on, there will be visits to other countries where they will be looking at opening markets, for some of our enterprises, especially companies that would be ready and willing to export their products to the rest of the world. There's also poor and inadequate specific industry knowledge, limited or no equity contribution. So all of these are just issues that we've been grappling with. So we're saying, as the National Empowerment Fund, that we are aware of the plight of especially the Black-owned companies, but we are trying in our small ways to try and respond to the challenges that I have just highlighted, even though we may not be able to answer to each and every market failure that I've highlighted. Next slide is the empowerment dividend. So here on the next slide, we're saying even though the NEF places an important focus on commercial viability, our mandate also focuses on other softer measures when we assess the transactions. So these are all the measures that we look at when we assess our transactions. Obviously, the obvious one will be the BEE component in the transaction. We look at ownership, management, control, and employment equity issues. We want to see whether there is any Black women involvement in the transaction, whether there's gonna be any job creation potential as a result of that investment. So here we'll be saying, even if we invest 5 million rands, even if you tell us you're gonna create 4 or 5 jobs, it's quite a lot for us, but we just want to see that additionality in the work that we are doing, and obviously the other developmental objectives as well of our government have to be met when we do these transactions, like the key sectors of the economy, growth sectors. It doesn't mean that if your transaction doesn't fall within the sectors that have been identified within IPEP, the IPEP program that is being spearheaded by the DTIC, it doesn't mean that we will not support those transactions, but we always urge our Black enterprises to also find a way of getting involved in what we call the sectors of the future, like the renewable energy, agro-processing. We're seeing a lot of enterprises who are also involved, especially Black women-owned enterprises that are involved in the tourism space. We are also seeing a lot of transactions within the Black industrialist program that are actually driven by Black women-owned companies. Can we move to the next slide? So here we just wanted to share with you some of our key performance milestones. Just to mention that we have now approved more than 1,000 transactions that are worth 11 billion rands. And these investments have a total project value of more than 20 billion rands. So the total project value is higher than the 11 billion that I mentioned because of the co-financing arrangements that I was mentioning earlier. Over 7.5 billion has already been dispersed directly into the economy. Over 3.9 billion has been repaid by our investees. And for 18 years running, the NEF has actually secured clean external audit, which is why I believe we were chosen by the Solidarity Fund, because these are some of the other, things that they look for when they try and identify their partners. I have already spoken about the role they are playing in terms of providing support to Black-owned enterprises that want to get involved in the industrialization space. In this space, we have projects that are worth 13.2 billion rands that we have conceptualized with our various partners. So this is the area where we will take a project from pre-feasibility studies and move it to feasibility, bankable feasibility, and all the way up to financial close. So this would be like your large projects. It's not your small projects. So the good example I can share with you is a hospital group that is within the health, healthcare space. They approached the NEF a few years ago. So the only thing they had at the time was the license from the Department of Health. So we worked with them, invested a little bit of money. The initial funding was about 10 million. It went to 50 million. We ended up investing up to about 100 million. When it reached bankable feasibility stage and financial close, we're then able to crowd in other investors like your PICs, Standard Bank, Eskom Pension Fund, and the value of that transaction today is estimated at around 3 billion rands. So these are some of the projects and investment opportunities that we want Black entrepreneurs to play a role in. We shouldn't just limit ourselves to SMMEs and just remain in the periphery of the economy. So with our the resources that we have at our disposal, we just wanted to share with you that these are some of the milestones that we've been able to achieve. And then on the next slide, these are the human capital highlights. Or here we just, you can go to slide 9. So here we just wanted to show you some of the sectors, the key sectors that we have invested in over a period of time. So I have already touched on the role we are playing in terms of driving the creation of new industrial capacity within the economy. There's the Black Industrialists Program, and for SMMEs, we have already disbursed over 2.1 billion into the support of 500 small and medium enterprises, township and rural economies. Here we have a dedicated fund that supports businesses in rural areas and townships. So when we were hit by the crisis that we're trying to address at the moment, it became much easier for the NEF to hit the ground running, because it's work that we have already been doing with a lot of companies that are located in the townships and rural economies. In this sector, we have invested more than 2.1 billion, where we have supported more than 260 entities. We are also involved in property development, where we have supported the construction of malls. You may have realized that once again during the riots that a lot of these properties, malls in the townships were actually damaged, and some of them were even burnt down. So you'll find that the entrepreneurs we are working with is people that we had started working with long before we were hit by this by the crisis. Tourism, that one is self-explanatory. As I was saying, that's where we're seeing a lot of women-owned enterprises. We're doing affordable housing. We do this in partnership with agencies of government like SHRA, and we're involved in agro-processing energy. In the energy space, we have invested over 650 million rands, where we have provided financial support to Black-owned and managed enterprises that are looking at either acquiring existing petrol stations, or people who are looking at setting up new petrol stations that never existed before. In this area, we have invested over 640 million rands. I think in total, we have now supported more than 140 petrol stations. We do this in partnership with the oil majors across the country, like your BPs, your Shell, where they would come to us and say, you understand the rural economies, the township economies better than we do. So we have then forged that new partnership with them as well. Next slide. So the achievements I have mentioned have been made possible by the fact that our organization is an academy of excellence. So when you interact with our various colleagues, we just wanted to share with you that these are some, even though we are a very small organization, but we pride ourselves on the fact that we are very agile, nimble-footed. The average age at the NEF of NEF employees is 89 years, which talks to the fact that we are indeed a maturing organization, and 60% of our employees are actually 60% are actually female. So I'm encouraging most women-owned enterprises to then try and reach out to these women who are showing a lot of dedication and commitment, to the work and the mandates of our government. Okay, can we move on? So coming to the social unrest, that was just a little bit about, the NEF. So please allow me for context to begin briefly with the work the NEF has done with the DTIC, specifically on the July 2021 social unrest. Wonga, I'm addressing Wonga from the Solidarity Fund. I just wanted to provide a bit of context before we come to the partnership we have with the Solidarity Fund. So, ladies and gentlemen, the country witnessed a spate of civil unrest in the month of July 2021 that resulted in the destruction of property and closure of many businesses in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. So the NEF immediately undertook an assessment of the impact of the unrest on its existing portfolio within the affected areas, because we wanted to understand how the riots had actually, impacted on our current portfolio. So among the repercussions, which everybody else is familiar with, were job losses, the closure of businesses, damage to property, and loss of stock, and all of this damage. So when the DTIC conducted their survey just to try and understand the severity of the riots, the estimated GDP loss, if I can call it that, is between 20 and 30 billion rands. So that's what we're trying to address. So I'm sure when people just woke up and decided to go on that destruction path, they didn't realize the impact, the long-lasting impact that whatever they were doing was going to have on the livelihoods of the people who were actually affected. Some of the people have lost their jobs. So yeah, I think we are in a dire situation as a country as we speak, because all of this happened on the back of everything else that was happening around COVID. So whilst we're trying to respond and address the challenges that the companies were affected by COVID were experiencing, then we had to try and respond to this challenge that we in the crisis that we are dealing with at the moment. Next slide. So what this infographic shows is the impact of the civil unrest. Remember, I was talking about the GDP loss, if I can call it that, but other entities are estimating it at over 50 billion rands. But when we did our own survey, so it means with the companies that the DTIC would be responsible for, we're estimating it at between 20 and 30 billion rands. So I have to say that nobody has the correct number. These are just estimates, as I have already alluded. So approximately 3,000 stores were looted, resulting in stock losses estimated at over 1.5 billion, a total of 61 malls in both provinces, that was Gauteng and KZN. So far we're counting about 161 malls. You will understand that in order to try and reconstruct and rebuild one mall, we are looking at anything between 400 million to about 500 million. Others will even be much higher than the amount I have just mentioned. with all these challenges, government and not least development finance organizations had to be proactive in the patriotic quest to drive business recovery. And that's what the discussion is about today. So next slide. Given these repercussions, the NEF is grateful to government and the DTIC in particular for having provided support of more than 650 million rands to the NEF. And we have another allocation for another DFI that falls within the DTIC. Their total allocation is estimated at more than 2 billion, and the DTIC's component within that is estimated at 2.4 billion. So this has been the allocation that has been given by our government to try and respond to the crisis that everybody else is concerned about. Next slide. So ladies and gentlemen, we are also pleased to report that the NEF has worked with its clients and has ensured that 80% of our affected clients return to operation within a very short space of time. And through working together with the IDC and the DTIC, the NEF has approved more than, now we're sitting at 557 million rands. So we started doing this work, I would say about 5 weeks ago, and we are really, really grateful to the colleagues from both NEF and DTIC who actually hit the ground running, who have been physically on the ground interacting with the various businesses that were affected by the crisis. So various NEF teams are on the ground as we speak around Gauteng and KZN. They're in areas like Moy River, Kwanongoma. Nobody would have thought that the crisis would go as far as some of these areas that I've just mentioned. When we saw this in the media, we thought it was the crisis was going to be located in the major cities. But when we started doing our work, we then realized that all these far-flung areas in the country have been equally impacted. So the devastation to the businesses, ladies and gentlemen, is considerable throughout the townships and rural nodes. The structural integrity of the properties is damaged, and therefore some of the malls must be demolished. So by starting from scratch, some of the malls will take up to 18 months to rebuild. So that's the kind of damage we are dealing with. Next slide. So what we seek to show here is that our teams of investment professionals, remember I said they have actually been on the ground. This is how our pipeline looks like. So if you look at the total investments that we are looking at, those are estimated at 2.9 billion rands. Some of the transactions have been withdrawn. I have already mentioned that we have approved 63 transactions that are worth 557 million rands. We have 10 transactions that are sitting at a DD, due diligence stage, and then pre-DD we have another 464 million. So these are the projects that we are, that we are busy with. So it's been a lot of work, because if you see the 273 companies there on the slide, it doesn't mean that this was just work that was done virtually. They had to physically go on the ground and try and interact with the enterprises that I have already mentioned. Next slide. So here we're just showing you the map of where our investment professionals, who comprise finance, legal advisors, risk assessment, and people who can help us with evaluations of the properties, that all of them have been deployed directly to the trouble spots to interact with the entrepreneurs. So we just wanted to show you the various areas where they have been to. Next slide. My apologies, I mixed up just the 2 slides, but I hope you were able to follow the sequence. So this is the NEF pipeline, just to show you, which sectors of the economy have been impacted by the riots. So it's mostly retail. You can see that with retail alone, we are sitting with transactions that are valued at 153 million. It's followed by services, food and beverages, transportation, because you may have seen the trucks that were bent on the road, especially around Moyo River. So this is just the sectoral breakdown of what we're looking at. Next slide. And then we come to the relief fund, so which is the subject of our discussion today. So ladies and gentlemen, so we are hosting this webinar, so you have received the context and about how we have gone about doing this work. So now we are coming to the Solidarity Fund, the partnership that we have with them. So this will be dedicated to providing recovery funding to SMMEs that are located in KZN and in Gauteng. But if a company can demonstrate to us that for instance, they were involved in the logistics businesses. So you have a truck that was moving from Limpopo to Gauteng, or from Gauteng, Limpopo to Gauteng. Okay, so because Limpopo is not, covered as part of this partnership, so that particular company must just give us assurance that it happened on that day as they were moving their goods, and then they were affected by the riots. So even though we are mainly focusing on the 2 provinces, but we are looking at the supply chains to say if there's a company that was affected, even though the location of the company is somewhere else in the country. So we will still be able to support that company. As we are aware, this is because of the riots. I don't have to repeat that. The purpose of the relief fund, therefore, is to restore business activity in the affected areas, to save much needed jobs and drive economic recovery and social stability. Next slide. So a total of 450 million has been allocated to the NEF Solidarity Fund's humanitarian crisis relief. We call a blended funding because it's going to be a combination of a loan portion and the grant portion. So we're going to blend the loans that we will be providing at zero interest rate, and the other portion is going to be coming in as a grant. We are obviously exceedingly grateful to our partners, the Solidarity Fund, through its Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund, for having committed a total 150 million to allow for the grant portion to go into these businesses. As I have already said, our loans will go in at 0% interest. So we're grateful to the Solidarity Fund on behalf of the enterprises who will be the beneficiaries of the work that we'll be doing with them. The criteria to access funding. So I have already mentioned that the business must be located in Gauteng or KZN. The applicant must also show that the business is not covered by insurance, or there is an insurance shortfall component. So the beneficiary must be a registered company. So just the normal day-to-day, requirements of actually providing support. I don't think it's necessary for me to. It's for your bedtime reading. There's a maximum. It's a maximum of 10 million rand loan funding that we will be providing. But if it's a little more than the 10 million. We do with the NEF component, we can go up to about 15 million and above. So the funding will not accrue any interest, and the maximum tenure for the loan will be about 60 months. So thank you very much. The invitation to the webinar does have the contact details. So if you want to interact with the colleagues at the National Empowerment Fund, we are more than welcome to do so. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you very much, CEO. And I see from the comments that there is keen interest in also creating the stability that we desire after the impact of the unrest, and the collaborative effort that the private sector and government entities have put together to ensure that the wheels of the economy start running again. So thank you very much, Madam CEO. If there are any other comments, perhaps from our panelists prior to me introducing Ms. Majola, you're most welcome by an indication of hands, but the panelists also have speaking rights, so to speak, excuse the pun. So if you just want to make a quick comment from what the CEO has said, and especially the work of the NEF in the milestones and its ability to draw in partnerships, critically so, to meet the needs of growing Black economic participation, and in this case, more specifically, in restoring businesses that had been negatively affected. There's just been a request, Madam CEO, to share your presentation, and I know that the colleagues are attending to some of these questions as well. And with these numbers being mentioned, this is one from Anonymous, saying that there's a lot of foreign-owned businesses that contribute to the economy in a major way. Are these also covered under the Economic Relief Fund? And I see our General Counsel is responding in real time to these questions as well. Of course, the question will always arise around the sin industries, Madam CEO, around gambling and in the tobacco and liquor space, whether the funding will cover that. But if there aren't any other questions, please allow me to introduce Ms. Wongagazi Majola. She's the head of reporting at Solidarity Fund, and which is in full, it's called the Solidarity Fund Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund, which is a program to sustain and uplift communities and SMMEs affected by the unrest. And included in her list of academic qualifications is an MBA degree from the Henley Business School and the successful completion of a general management program from the Gordon Institute of Business Science, and a Bachelor of Commerce honors degree in economics from the University of Fort Hare. And she has a wealth of experience, having been in management consultant at Monitor Group, Enterprise Development Specialist for the Accelerated Growth Initiative of South Africa, as SCISA, where she ensured that there are strategies in place to give access to market, finance, and capacity building to entities. So without any further ado, please help me welcome Ms. Wongagazi Majola, Head of Reporting at the Solidarity Fund. Good morning to you and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you. So if Wongagazi is still not ready, I'll just take one or two more questions, and we are live on Facebook. So if you've just joined us, welcome to it. It's called the Unrest Relief Fund webinar in partnership with the Solidarity Fund and the National Empowerment Fund. And earlier on, the CEO outlined in terms of the support that the NEF is giving to the Solidarity Fund for businesses that were affected by the unrest in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, and the amount is to the value of 450 million rand, and transactions have in earnest been approved. The principals and the investment associates hitting the road running, as it were, to ensure that the qualifying businesses are assisted to restore their operations as quickly as possible. CEO?
Can you respond to the questions?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, can you raise the question?
The question had to deal with the sin industries, one around the gambling, liquor and tobacco industries, which were outlets that were also affected during the unrest. And another one was the foreign-owned businesses foreign nationals maybe that are running businesses in townships and rural areas, are they covered under this fund or with the funding criteria? Thank you.
Okay, so the first category of investments, unfortunately, we are not able to fund those, the tobacco and liquor. That is a no-no, for us in terms of our investment criteria. So with regards to the foreign nationals, which I think the reason why I had alluded to the mandate of the NEF is because I had already anticipated that this question will come up. With the funding that is coming from the Solidarity Fund, we may look into that, but unfortunately with the funding that is coming from the NEF, it would be a bit difficult. However, you have DFIs like, the IDC and CIFA, who are, in a position, so their mandate allows them to provide support to all the enterprises. Whereas if you look at the NEF Act, for the crisis, we will be able to support Black-owned and white-owned South African companies. But unfortunately, we will not be looking at the foreign, nationals at this stage. But those companies can contact us because we are also working very closely with the IDC and CIFA. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, much appreciated. And I think what for me, it's indicative that the work that the NEF is doing, we still haven't reached the capacity where people understand fully what the mandate is and the assistance that is available. And this is something that we chat about with colleagues, CEO, that especially in your informal sectors, that it seems like a very complicated, cumbersome, tedious process to have to apply for assistance, but it is a regulatory process that we have to follow as a DFI. So I really thank you. But again, I think it's something that we need to translate and get to a grassroots level, layman's language, so to speak, of getting the message across and the good news story of the NEF.
Absolutely, Cindy, I think you have captured it very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Wongagazi is the head of reporting at the Solidarity Fund. I'm just checking on my screen if we were able to migrate you from an attendee to a panelist. I did introduce you earlier on. So thank you so much for your time, Wongagazi. Your time starts now. You're most welcome to proceed as soon as you're ready. Good morning.
Okay, I can start. As we know, in July of this year, South Africa was rocked by civil unrest that swept across KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. The unrest quickly led to violence and looting with dire consequences for our country, which is already struggling under the strain of the COVID pandemic and subsequent lockdowns. Businesses, both big and small, were destroyed. Supply chains were compromised. Jobs lost. Access to food and medicine was affected. The impacts of these consequences are still being felt. In an effort to minimize the impact on our country, and at the request of President Ramaphosa, the Solidarity Fund Board agreed to ring-fence and oversee the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund, whose sole purpose is to respond to the humanitarian, medical, and economic crisis that ascended as a consequence of the protests. This is a short-term intervention of 3 to 6 months aimed at addressing immediate concerns that are a direct result of these protests. To fund this ambitious response, the Solidarity Fund launched a fundraising drive, which has raised 596 million rands, including 400 million rands that was donated by the National Treasury from the RDP Fund, and donations are still coming in. As a rapid response vehicle, the Solidarity Fund is ideally positioned to respond quickly and in a targeted manner to this crisis, where urgency is key. Despite this need for urgency, one of the Solidarity Fund's key priorities is ensuring that the funds available go where they can do the most good, and that the processes of good governance that the Solidarity Fund was founded on are adhered to. After an extensive research, key gaps were identified, and the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund is now implementing an integrated and coordinated approach involving partners and key stakeholders in order to plug these gaps and ensure that South Africans in KZN and Gauteng receive the aid that they need. The HCRF has undertaken interventions that are focusing on 3 areas. That is food support, medical support, and business recovery. Business recovery is aimed at supporting small businesses, which due to the unrest are in need of stock, infrastructure, and funds to cover operational costs. Through this assistance, we will positively impact employees through resultant workplace security. And this is where our relationship with the NEF comes in. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our communities and economy, providing employment and access to goods and supporting suppliers. SMMEs account for 89% of businesses impacted by the civil unrest. Small businesses provide more than 70% of the jobs in South Africa. So those SMMEs that were damaged or destroyed, but are not covered by insurance, have been left with few options for survival. And of course, this impacts those who depend on them to make a living as well. This is why, together with the National Empowerment Fund, the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund established the 450 million rand Unrest Relief Fund. Our decision to partner with the NEF was a simple one. They have an established record and reputation within the SMME sector. Their successes in empowering small businesses across all sectors are impressive. Our mutual commitments to impact, good governance, and rapid intervention to support the people of South Africa through SMME business growth are aligned. Through this partnership, the HCRF aims to support SMMEs in getting back on track, thereby helping them return to their important position within the community, the supply chain, and the economy. And with this partnership, we'll be able to give communities access again to services and products that these businesses ordinarily provide, so that they do not have to travel for long distances. The civil unrest couldn't have come at a worse time for our country. The Solidarity Fund, through the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund, sees its role in helping get KZN and Gauteng back on their feet as crucial to supporting the well-being of the public during these tough times. As always, we are gratified to witness how civil society, business, and organizations such as the NEF have come together to support our country. In all we do, our partnerships are key to the success of our interventions, and we are excited to be partnering with the NEF on this important initiative. That's all from me. I think the CEO of the National Empowerment Fund has stipulated the criteria and the rationale behind this Unrest Fund. I'll hand over to you, Program Director. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Majola. I really appreciate you outlining and especially reinforcing, or rather reiterating, the importance of the partnership and the values that bring the NEF and the Solidarity Fund together. Just a very quick one from our social media pages is the longevity, or how long is the time span or lifespan of the Solidarity Relief Fund, primarily because, you know, some businesses may have been burned to the ground essentially and would have to build from the ashes, as it were. So can you maybe just respond to that question while we field others? Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the longevity of the fund, remember the fund, we've got the Solidarity Fund, and now we have the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund. The plan for the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund is to ensure that we utilize the funds that we have received within a 3 to 6 months period. Depending on the nature of activities and events, we'll be able to ascertain thereafter if we are able to go beyond that 6 months, especially for the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund, because the Solidarity Fund mandate is different to the one of the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund. Thank you.
And the difference being, the other question is that is the fund only for formal businesses? In other words, those that are registered and they are tax compliant. I know CEO also touched on this, but it seems to be a reoccurring theme. Or how far does the support also go in terms of the informal business sector as well for businesses? Thank you.
For this particular partnership, we are looking at the formal businesses, at the ones that are tax compliant. We've got different buckets within the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund. As we are looking at the different initiatives to embark on, we'll be able to ascertain whether we are going to the informal businesses or not. But currently, for this particular one, we are looking at formal businesses. Thank you.
All right, thank you again for your presentation, and we certainly welcome the relationship with the NEF going forward in helping to restore businesses or qualifying businesses in this case. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Nomfundo Mgcoyi. She's an accomplished and multi-skilled entrepreneur and community builder, and she is the founder and CEO of Icebo Lethu Group, which currently boasts over 120 branches in KwaZulu-Natal, with one in the United Kingdom, and currently employs over 1,500 staff members. Ms. Mgcoyi is the chairperson of the KZN South African Funeral Practitioners Association, and she's also won a number or numerous awards, including the Standard Bank KZN Top Businesswoman of the Year. Over to you, Ms. Mgcoyi, and thank you so much for joining us. And you'll give us the context as to how your business was affected as one of the investees, and where you are in terms of being 100% back in operation. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you and we can see you. You're very beautiful.
Very much, yes. Our company, it offers funerals and funeral policies. It was started in 2009 in Hammersdale, and presently we have more than 120 branches in KZN. 24 of those were looted. Amongst the 24, 3 were burnt to ashes. We lost a lot. But thanks to NEF, they came through. Yes, it was a lengthy process, but we had all the documents they needed. They've made payment to us. We've started renovating our branches. About 60% of them are back, and we are still waiting to complete some of the branches that are still not up. The malls, in fact, the delays has been caused by the malls that are not in operation yet. But we are hopeful that as soon as they're up, we will be continuing with those. But NEF has done a beautiful job to us by assisting us with that funding to rebuild all that we have lost. We've managed to make sure that we don't all our staff stays, they don't lose their jobs, they're still employed. We didn't have to retrench anyone, thanks to NEF as well for coming through to us, making sure that we rebuild branches in time for people to be at work as well. So we are really, really grateful to the fund itself. It really, really helped.
Thank you so much for the testimonial. And I don't necessarily want to take you back to reliving that moment where the unrest happened. I think it took the country really by surprise, and how quickly the situation became volatile. Maybe you can just give us a sense of where were you at the time, and what was your reaction to what was going on? Did you have an inclination? Was there a warning somewhere? And I mean, being an essential service that offer a burial, you know, in these times of COVID, etc., how did that impact your even your relationship with the community, your business operations, and maybe even lessons going forward, if you can prevent this kind of thing, or at least mitigate against any potential unrest?
I don't want to lie, we did not see this one coming. It was early hours of the morning when I got a call from one of my colleagues in the area telling me that Wamashu was on fire, telling me that Ikabolet's office is on fire at Wamashu. Oh my God, then I saw on TV and they were sending me videos of the entire mall being burned. Oh my God, it was like a dream to me. I kneeled down and prayed, and I didn't believe it that people could just damage something that is so helpful to them. And after that, the next day, they were just damaging. It was one office after the other, one office after the other. People were calling me from different towns saying, this one is down, Nkandla is down, Melmoth is down. It was hard. Empangeni was down because we all over KZN. It was really, really difficult to take that and accept. But we tried to save some of the branches. Some community members were assisting us by helping us with security to make sure some of the branches were not damaged, especially mortuaries, because we had mortuaries where we had kept bodies for families that were supposed to be buried the next weekend. It was difficult. The next day, I remember at Wanongoma, they had to stop a car. They want the looters, they wanted to take out the casket from a car and put it down on the road. Why would you do that to someone? I mean, we are people. We respect death, and it was the worst time in my life when my staff had to call me telling me that they've been stopped, the hearse has been stopped to do a funeral. Everywhere, it was like there was just someone attacking us, because at Clarewood, one of our biggest offices with another bigger showroom, I saw caskets on the road. Why would you put a casket on the road? When we grew up, we used to respect funerals, respect a casket itself. To just take it and put it on the road. I could see in some malls they were taking caskets and using them as containers to carry groceries and food and alcohol in some other malls. Why would you do that? It was really, really difficult. Unfortunately, it's something you can't stop. It's something you just have to just pray that the economy gets better, people get more jobs, so that more malls they recovered, so that people can go back to work, and so that all this can stop. Because I don't know whether it's poverty or what causes this, but it was the most difficult time of our lives as a brand. But I don't want to lie, some communities, they were there to assist us. Even afterwards, they were there to help us clean up and as much as it was painful, but seeing the communities helping us I felt very, very grateful, because as a brand, we do a lot through our foundation, giving back to the same communities that were damaging our offices. There was a video where I saw a boy, they were fighting over furniture, they were fighting over our chairs. Pilani Mall, they just bent it down, fighting over our furniture, everything. It was just bad. And at some point, we recovered some caskets from Guamashu, where some of the boys were trying to sell them to someone. Imported caskets, they were selling them for 1,500 rands. We recovered those 3 caskets, and it was just sad. Why would you buy a casket and keep it at home and say, when I die, okay, you're preparing yourself? It was just, I mean, I couldn't understand it at all. But it's, all in all, it was such a very bad experience. I don't wish it for anyone. I'm just grateful to NEF for all the funding and the journey they've started with us in helping us regain all our offices and continue with business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, for your generosity in wanting to tell your story, because sometimes it's difficult to get a testimonial for personal reasons or otherwise, where on the one side, when we want to encourage entrepreneurship, but if we don't have examples of success, especially in business amongst Black people, sometimes it becomes a myth, or people assume that it isn't it's not necessarily as broad-based as we'd like it to be. So before you go, Ms. Mkoi, there's a question here from Unkululeko Mhlaba, and she wants to know, how can they access opportunities to supply services to Icebo? And why this question, for me, it ties in with what the National Empowerment Fund does, is that there is an ecosystem that is being created for businesses and investees. So if we know, for example, that there is an opportunity to supply corporate uniforms, there's a company in the Eastern Cape called Rise Uniforms, and then you partner them with where the access to market is, and vice versa. So this one, I think, ties in pretty much with what the NEF does in terms of creating that ecosystem.
Yes, no, it's a very easy process. We've got a database they need to join in, because we have a lot of companies that supply us with different things that we offer to our clients, just like tents, cutlery, crockery, cars, we cars as well, as in family cars. A month, I think, as a brand, we pay about 5 million rands, which doubled during the peak season. I think there was a month where we paid about 12 million to all these suppliers that supplies us with some of the things that we use as a company that are in our database. So we are very, very grateful that from what God is blessing us with, we can still share with other people in different communities where we're servicing. So where we offer our service. So they can just join in our website as well. And our head office is in Umbilo Road, number 277 Umbilo Road. They can contact us, go there and bring their profiles and be some of our suppliers in our database. We do help other smaller companies, and enterprise development is key to us. It's a very important part of our brand.
Yes, and lastly, just how far is the journey around transforming the sector? Because, the battle that we have, it's a very peculiar situation in this country where we want to create an equal society, and yet the history, we're a product of a history that had excluded the majority Black from economic participation. In your view, how far is the transformation, and what is being done in transforming the burial space?
There has been a lot of improvement. Looking at presently, I serve as a chairperson. I'm being female in a male-dominated space, but I'm chairperson running the whole province of KZN. And I also sit in our national structure in the association where Icebo is affiliated. So there's been a lot of transformation, but not just because of gender, because of the excellence within our business and how well I run this business of Icebo as well. But yes, there has been a lot of improvement, and our people are really, really trusting us as Omas Nwabsane. They are really supporting us as well. We no longer look down upon as if, no, it's just a Masnwabsane. They are really taking us serious as financial services providers as well.
Thank you again, Namfunda, for your time. And if there's anything that we may not have asked, or you know that you'd like to share, please engage with us on the social media platforms. We are live on Facebook, and even the comments on the chat room as well. But Sibongeka kakhulu, thank you so much for your time. So just, yeah, so please stick around until we conclude in case there are other comments or questions as well. But really, really appreciate you sharing your testimonial. And we're going to move now to Sibonelo Mbata, whom we earlier had a chat with, and his business in KwaMashu is one of the franchisees in the petroleum space for BP. So we had built that rapport earlier on, so I'm not going to take too much time in reintroducing you, but I think what we want to get is the emotion behind seeing a passion project, something that you love, that you had built from blood, sweat, and gore, as it were, being burned to the ashes, and not understanding why the rationale, why you are necessarily being targeted. You just get caught up in this whirlwind of violence and whatever motives that are behind that. So I'm going to leave it to you, Mr. Mbata. Just give us how you manage, or what happened during the unrest, and how far are you in your journey of being fully operational? Thank you.
Thank you once again. It sounds like Sis Namfunda and I may have to form a support group, because I'm listening to her and I'm like, this is exactly what was happening with me on that evening. It was a Sunday night. I was at home, and I had around 11-ish. Then I started, getting a lot of WhatsApps messages, from my staff, and calls, and panic. What was most difficult for me that evening was that I had to deal with 3 different service stations, all going through exactly the same thing, like it was well planned. And, I felt so helpless. I have never in my whole life imagined that at some point you would actually be, because I was on my phone, so I've got cameras on my phone, and I was actually looking at the mob, approaching the service station, and my staff calling in panic. And I remember giving them, instruction to say, guys, just leave, just make sure that you're safe. And after that, as soon as they flooded into the service station, the one in KwaMashu in particular, at that time, which I was looking at, and then, immediately after that, then my cameras went off, and I think they actually ripped off the cameras at that time. And so I couldn't see what was happening. It was difficult. I couldn't leave the house. You couldn't drive in any of the roads. The roads were closed. It felt like a movie. It was like somebody is going to wake you up and say, hey, you're watching a scary movie, but it was real. And when I woke up the next day after early in the morning, and then I'm told that the BP Dube village has actually been burnt to ashes, and another total in Bamshela was destroyed. They were still busy. Almost, that one took days, because they didn't burn that one, but each day they were coming for something different. Today they come to remove windows. The next day they're coming to remove the ceiling, the plugs, electric plugs. And so to the extent that all that remains there now is just walls with nothing, literally nothing in it. And the very next day, then I'm also told I've got another service station in Johannesburg, and I'm told that, it was bombed at night and they were looking for money. So it was really, one blow after the other. I think one thing that I'm always grateful for is that God kept me sane. I didn't lose my mind. I wasn't admitted in hospital or anything like that. And I'm still grateful today. And perhaps one cannot not thank the NEF for coming on board. So I've got one of the three, in fact, one of the 4 service stations that were affected. 2 are up and running, 2 are not in a running state at this time. The Duba Village one will have to be demolished completely and rebuilt. I mean, I already received a quote for 15 million rand there just to do that job. Also, Bamshela, it's probably going to cost in the region of a 10, 15 million rand. Guamashu is up and running, thanks to NEF for their assistance. Although I haven't fully opened the entire service station, but I managed to get the forecourt running. We are close to opening the shop as well in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I think that's been my journey. Maybe to answer some of the questions that some people ask, how is your relationship? How is my relationship with the community? It's quite a tricky one, that one. It feels like, well, I've never been cheated on, but when you have a partner, I hear stories that when you have a partner that's cheated on you, and there's an issue of trust. And perhaps I think I'm at that point. Sis Nomfundo alluded to the fact that we do a lot for these communities. In one of the interviews, I actually did mention that I school so many kids in these communities that I don't even know. I don't ask their names. I don't know who they are. But if there's a need to take this kid to school, you do that. If there's a need to buy uniforms for these kids, you do that. You take some to university. You sponsor community projects. Come every matric, my service stations are a meeting point, and you arrange all different help for the community and for the people that wouldn't have made it, post-matric, how to cope with all those things. So these are all the things that you try and do just to be visible, to be part of the community. But when such happens, it leaves you questioning whether are you really living with people? Are they in it for you, or are they in it for what they can get out of you? So I think it's just those critical things. But yeah, so it is what it is, and I think I'll just pause there for now. I don't know if you've got any other questions.
Thank you so much. I think one is just in terms of the process, what you had to do on your part to access the funding and assistance for recovery and to sustain your business. Thank you.
So I really have to single out here Mr. Madonsela from the KZN office in the NEF, who actually reached out to me and said, hey, I heard of what happened. We have assistance for you. And again, if I have to be honest, I had my doubts because I was thinking, hey, how long is this thing gonna take? Am I wasting my time or anything? And he said, please, man, I wanna help you. And he really did. I've been very thoroughly impressed. His work ethic. I mean, I still received messages from him at 12 midnight asking for this and that. And so I'm really, really very impressed about the work that he did. And to him, I'm very, very grateful, and the entire NEF team that he works with. If there is one thing though that I may perhaps, if I were, and I hope they will take this with the best intentions, from me. As an entrepreneur, I think there's been a lot of help that is coming from everywhere. But the problem is that I find is that you sort of like are dangling a carrot. You're saying, I've got this help for you, but for you to get this, you must give me all these things and make sure that I get them. You know, you can't have a missing document. And I understand. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be asking for the requirements, but I'm also saying that at times some of these small entrepreneurs don't have all the requirements that we're looking for. And if we are then saying we've got help, but you need to have tax clearance certificate, this, that, and the other, and you find that maybe poor guy hadn't submitted the latest submissions, and maybe some stuff were burnt and things like those. So you find that sometimes our intentions are good, but the requirements can be onerous. And this is just me, but in my case, I did have the required documentation. I'm now speaking because I'm an entrepreneur, and I always try and represent the larger community of entrepreneurs out there to say, can we not relax some of the requirements, especially when it comes to rescue programs of this nature, and just get these guys up and running, you know?
Yeah, it's probably a question that Ms. Majola or CEO can respond to towards, or their CEO, in terms of relaxing some of the requirements. Madam Mchetwa, is it even possible, permissible, or to allay the concerns of the entrepreneur?
Yes, thank you, Program Director. I thought I should respond directly to the issues that were raised by Undabezit. So, Sponelo, remember we started by informing you that we get these allocations from our shareholder ministry, which is the DTIC. But in terms of the PFMA regulations and everything else, the money comes directly from the National Treasury. So there's no way we would come to the entrepreneurs, especially during such a difficult period, and say we are dangling a carrot. It doesn't talk to who the NEF is. It doesn't talk to our values, because we believe that we call ourselves a funder with a soul. I think we're the only entity so far that is talking about the psychological impact of what has happened on the entrepreneurs, the emotional, the depression, anxiety, and so on. So when we approach this work, we don't just do it in a mechanical manner, as it were. But coming to the requirements that you were, mentioning earlier, obviously we don't want your company to be mentioned in a report by a law enforcement agency because you would not have complied. So we always think it's better, for all of us, it's in the best interest of the entrepreneur to make sure that we comply with all the relevant laws of the country. Imagine if we will be audited, by the way, by the AG. So when the AG comes to the NEF, we just want to make sure that everything we would have done with the funds that were allocated to us, that everything will be above board. You certainly don't want the NEF to be mentioned in some of the commissions, because I can tell you now, there will be an audit process of the monies. These are taxpayers' monies, by the way, so we have to make sure that everything we do it with integrity, which is what we've been doing. Even if you look at the COVID-19 funds that were allocated to the NEF last year, once again, through a similar process by the DTIC, through Minister Patel, those funds, when they audited the NEF, our names were not in that report. I won't mention which report. I think all of you will know exactly what I'm talking about. So we want to protect you, and we are also protecting our reputation as an organization. But we were able to actually provide all of this information that we were looking for within a very short space of time. We only started doing this work about 5 weeks ago, but we have already finalized your transactions, the transactions that we are referring to. So I hope this helps, with all the other entrepreneurs who are looking at, approaching the NEF. But what has been good about the colleagues who've been interacting with the various business owners and enterprises is that in other instances, you'll find that a business owner lost everything. There was, the financial information, the laptops, the computers were destroyed. There was nothing. What has been, outstanding about the work that the colleagues have done is that they were able to reconstruct the financial information that you are supposed to look at. They would go to the banks, they went to the accountants of some of these companies. I don't know how they did it, but they would tell us when they come to the committees that CEO, when we got there, this company had lost everything, but they would still be in a position to reconstruct something that would allow us to show, the AG when she visits us that everything was actually done according to the rules and regulations, or in terms of the PFME requirements and so on and so forth. So well done to you, Mr. Mbata, because you have actually complied. But as I said, a program director, there are other agencies who are also helping with, with the informal, they're helping the informal traders, like SIFA, for instance. So you'll find that the requirements may not be exactly the same as, as what the NEF would look for when we interact with these companies. So thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And I think you've covered the question from Roxanne Ndlovu, who essentially says that they have been affected by the looting. They have made the application, but the paperwork is taking a long time. And they now have to outsource the financials. I think it's about 8,000 Rand that he says they had to pay to an accountant so that they can comply with the requirements of the NEF. So I don't know if you want to maybe respond to Roxanne, or if you had covered that response based on Mr. Mbata's question as well, or comment.
Thank you, Program Director. Did you say it's Roxanne?
Roxanne Ndlovu, yes, ma'am.
Roxanne, oh, okay. Roxanne, let me give you my my number. It's 011 305 8159. So we can talk after this session. As I said, there is a possibility of reconstructing your financial information, if I can put it like that. So by working with our teams, they will come to where, I don't know where you are based. So our investment professionals and our legal advisors will come, they will spend a few hours with you. And I'm sure after that interaction, you would have provided them, with the names of your banker and so on and so forth, and then we'll take it from there. But they have done it for other clients as well. So I don't think it will be difficult for you to do this, and there's no need for you to pay such a lot of money. You are in financial distress. You are in financial distress already. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense to ask, our enterprises and clients to pay so much just to get, their financials in order, Program Director. Thank you.
Thank you for that, CEO. So just to mention that number, it's 011-305-8159. And we're welcome to go to the NEF website as well. Much appreciated, CEO. We now have our investee, the final speaker for the program, as Bangubane was also affected, and he is in the graphic design space, the Internet of Things, and we'll hear his story on his journey to being assisted and the impact of the unrest as well. Mr. Bangubane, it's over to you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Program Director. As introduced, my name is Bangubane. I run a business based in Umlazi Mega City. It's a graphic design business specializing in branding, signage, as well as printing. It also incorporates a photo printing center as well as a photocopy center. Our business is based in Umlazi Mega City and employs a complement staff of about 9 youth from Umlazi Township. And our target market is the small businesses around the township, local community organizations, as well as general public. Logoman has enjoyed a steady growth for the past 30 years until COVID happened. And then, as like all other businesses, Logoman was negatively impacted by COVID-19. As we were just recovering from the impact of COVID and the business was picking up, the looting and the riots happened. And then it knocked us down again after the lockdown. My story started on a Sunday when I got a call from one of my staff to tell me that the center is being attacked. They are breaking into the shops. I immediately phoned one of my guys and phoned the center to check if that was true. And then they confirmed. Our shop was used as an entrance to the shop. Our shop is positioned in such a way that it is the first shop next to the entrance to the center. They tried to break the main door of the center, but they couldn't. And then us being the first shop with the huge windows and the glasses in front of the entrance, they broke the doors. I mean, they broke the glasses and went into our shop. And then from our shop, they broke another glass to enter into the center. Obviously, when they got into our offices, they took all our computers. Everything that was portable, they took. Being me, I couldn't stay at home and say, it will happen, whatever is going to happen. I got my guys, my friends, I got some of my staff members. We drove to the center. We battled to get into the center, but eventually we managed. When we got into the center, it was buzzing. We were used as a passage. People were going in and out through our shop. We had to fight. We had to fight them off the shop. We gave them a space so that they could go through, but not go inside the shop, but go through the front of the shop. So that happened. They went through into the shop, into the shopping center, and then they took whatever they were taking. They were using us, our shop, as a passage out with whatever goods that they were taking from the shop, from the center. From that, I had to stay at the shop for the whole week to make sure that they were not taking the rest of the stuff that was salvaged. Fortunately, we managed to salvage about 3 of our big machines. We've got large format printers and other large digital printing machines that we managed to salvage, but the rest of other machines were taken and looted. In the midst of all the confusion, I spent the whole week at the shop trying to protect the shop. They were still coming in. This thing happened on Sunday, and even on Friday, they were still coming in trying to get into the shop, but I had to chase them out of the shop. I spent day and night until Saturday, the following Saturday. in the midst of all the confusion and whatever that was happening, for whatever reason, I got a call from Mr. Madonsela. I had to single him out again because of his work ethics. He said, no, we can help you. I was also skeptical because of all the documentation that they normally ask for when you apply for funding. Fortunately, I was up to date with all my compliance. I submitted everything that they needed. I have to say kudos to the, I have to give kudos to the NEF team. I mean, when other institutions were still contemplating helping small businesses, NEF was already processing funds. You know, I think their swift and relentless action is actually putting them at the top of their game. So I was really, really happy, and I really appreciate his help. And then I managed to save jobs. Within 3 weeks, the fund was paid into my business. I started building and reconstructing the fittings and the furniture. I started buying computers and some of the equipment that was looted. The business is now up and running. We've got the staff back in action. So although it's still slow, we're still waiting for some of the equipment because there's a shortage of some computers from Japan and China, I mean. So basically the business is up and running, although it is still slow. But I'm really grateful to NEF and the team, because they were there to help wherever they could. All the documentation that was needed, they were able to help me and direct me. I think that's what ended that. I'm really grateful to the team at NEF and the funding as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ngubane, for your testimony. I really, really appreciate it. I think it's very encouraging. And I hope that other entrepreneurs who had been affected by the unrest would also reach out and get the same experience as you have had. Thank you, really appreciate it. Madam CEO, if maybe we can request just closing remarks. We at the end of the formalities, and then or maybe we can start with Ms. Majola as well, just in the process now of application, especially for the Solidarity Humanitarian Relief Fund, and then we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. From the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund side, we have given everything to the National Empowerment Fund. They are the ones that are going to roll out the entire program because they've got the experience and the expertise on this. So we are trusting the 150 million that we'll be giving out to them for them to be able to roll out. The only things that we are going to engage upon is the reporting, checking the governance processes, if they are followed, checking how much disbursements have been done and so forth. But in terms of the actual program, it's going to be run by the NEF. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director, and thank you to everybody who has participated in this discussion. But also I'd like to take the opportunity just to thank the few speakers, the entrepreneurs who were giving us their testimonies, because if there were people who were still doubting whether the government is really committed to providing financial support to the companies that were affected, I'm sure you were able to learn from the entrepreneurs who have just shared their experiences with all of us. And once again, to express our gratitude to the Solidarity Fund you could have decided to focus on other things, but that critical decision you made of saying you also wanted to play a role is highly, highly appreciated by the National Empowerment Fund. And as I said, by all the entrepreneurs that we have interacted with so far. So maybe in closing, Program Director, just for us to remind ourselves that, you know, we're talking about property, we're talking about, you know, the looting of the shops, the products that were destroyed, the disruption of the supply chains, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the high cost of this violence, you know, obviously to property. For us, we have also experienced, you know, the fact that, you know, the greatest loss was the loss of human life. So that is the greatest cost of everything that has actually happened, you know, around this crisis. So if we can just keep that at the back of our minds, so that even if people were still contemplating doing something similar to this, we must never remember, you know, what this violence has actually done to the livelihoods of all South Africans. It must never happen again. I think the president has spoken about this. Our leaders in government and everywhere, you know, religious leaders and everywhere else, they have actually spoken about this, that in fact, the poor and the marginalized will actually bear the brunt of all of this. Think about the people who are sitting at home, who are not working, when in fact, they had stable jobs. They knew that every day, you know, they would go to work and they would actually put food on the tables of their families. But all of that was just wiped out overnight, or just over a few days, as we saw during the riots. So that would be my closing remarks, a program director, to say that as the National Empowerment Fund, our entrepreneurs out there in the townships and rural areas, they must know that the NEF is their partner. When we go to their premises, they mustn't look at us as if, these people are coming, you know, with a, you know, funding. So when we go in there, we want to do this together. We want to make sure that we will handhold them every step of the way, because this relationship will also not end here. Once we have invested the funds that government has entrusted with the NEF, it becomes a long-term relationship. Those investments will go to our post-investment division, and on a monthly basis, there will be a regular communication and contact between the NEF employees and our investee companies. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Program Director.
Thank you, CEO, much appreciated. And to all our esteemed panelists and all the attendees, we're really grateful for your time. That concludes the business of the day. We're going to play out with another investee, CEO, that had approached the NEF under the Economic Recovery Fund to restore her business. She is in the food or fast food space, and that is Ms. Gidiboni Malaji, who would have loved to have joined us, but we thought to just share her story because it really inspires a sense of renewed confidence in getting the country back on track, and the efforts that have been made by the likes of the NEF, Solidarity, government, and the public sector as well. So with those words, thank you very much for joining us. For more information, you're welcome to go on to nefcorp.co.za. Until we meet next time, from myself and the technical crew, thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.
My name is Kidibone Patricia Malachi, born and bred in Mamelodi. We're now in Sebokeng. This store we call it Mandela Square. I know there's a Mandela Square somewhere in Joburg, but this one is the one in Sebokeng. I got 14 stores that were looted. And out of the 14, one was burned down. That's in Mayfield.
Ngelanga le looting into enzekele kakhulu lana eshop ibebuhlungu because sibone umsebenzi wethu like bawuthatha basithathela ukudla etafuleni bamosha ishop umsebenzi onzima owenziwe la shopping because le stolo sethu ngendlela sisithanda ngakhona ikhaya lethu kula sazi ukuthi abantwana bethu bathola ibread and butter khona so you can imagine uma ubhekile yonke into ithathwa nje akunanto ongayenza ukuthi ungamisa lobo zinto abazithathayo lapha eshop so literally istolo sethu is totally looted bathathe yonke into.
So what actually happened here, it's heartbreaking because as a breadwinner, I've got 9 people depending on me. So since I'm at home, I can't do much because they look up to me. So, but then I feel like they've robbed us a home because I've started here since this store was opening from scratch. I feel like they've robbed us our home. The people who were supposed to be protecting us, then robbed us of our jobs.
The total damage, I think, out of the 14 stores, we had about more than 400 families that were affected because of we could not open the store. So the strategy that we used, the high volume stores that were affected, we closed the smaller stores to take equipment to those stores that we can open. And then, you know what, I think the way that I started, I need to thank the CEO of NEF for what she did and all the employees that I worked with, and also Dr. Nkuna, who introduced me to NEF. NEF, I said, you know what, I was busy compiling applications for all the institutions, and NEF was one of them. NEF, IDC, and other institutions. From there, I went to Mike's Nkuna office, and then I met Mohammed Mia and Sia. And from there, they said, like, can you please come back again on Wednesday? You know, that night I slept. I said, you know what, I could feel it that, you know what, these people are going to help me. Wednesday I went and I met Exco of NEF, and after that they brought there's this lady, Eldine, you know, her department. And from there they started working with me on a Wednesday. And from there I was like, wow, so have we started already? And they said yes. So that Wednesday I started sending them my P&Ls, you know, management accounts, everything. And then this lady by the name of Lungi, let me tell you, she's amazing. She's a magic. Within a week, I got a call that, Auskidi, your application has been approved. I applied for 5 stores and they approved all the stores. 10 million, 2 million per store. Let me tell you, it was like, it was not like, it was a blessing. I was so happy. I have never seen people that were so passionate. I mean, within a week, due diligence, everything was done. Everything was done within a week. And right now we'll be going to KFC Sebokeng, where we opened. And Protea Glen is one of them with the NEF money. So honestly, I'm telling you that I'm so thankful towards NEF. It's rare where you get an institution that will help you so quick. So to them, thank you very much. I really appreciate it because they made it happen. They made me now to open my stores. Out of the 14 stores I opened, I'm left with 5 now. NEF gave me 10 million, of which I appreciate a lot. And then this store, they haven't helped me for the store because of the maximum of the amount was 10 million. Total damage, it's about 39, I think, yeah, somewhere there, 39 million. But you know, the claims are coming in drips and drabs. You know, one manager will say, oh, I forgot the safe, they took the safe. So the amount keeps increasing. So the total damage for the store is about 4.2 million, the total damage of the store. So in total, you know, the damage was very high. And, you know, all my employees are affected. I mean, I've got an open policy of they can talk to me, they can call me anytime. So I've got, I don't know how many calls from them and say, Auskidi, when are we opening? Auskidi, we heard that Sebokeng opened. When are we opening? The damage in Sebokeng was not as severe as this one. So, but then we've got Yam, the franchisor, who now assisted our staff with about $250. They applied, and I hear that they received emails that, you know, they were approved. So that was the side from the franchisor that they played. But then from our staff, whenever I talk to them, we had a meeting here last week. They're all like, some are feeding like 9 families, and to me it was like, what? We do have such people still in South Africa, where a person who works for KFC as a cashier will feed so many people. And it breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart to see that, how are they going to survive until the store is open? Where am I going to get the money, to open the store, because it's about 4.1 million. But what I say is that for now, I will not retrench anyone. My intention is not to close the store, is to retain the employees, to see that I open the store and they can come back to work.